Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. 9800X3D versus 7800X3D. It's coming down to this. When is the 9800X3D going to launch? What's the pricing going to be versus the 7800X3D? Because that pricing has gone absolutely insane. We've got tons of great questions for our October Q&A, including Black Friday sales. Should you be grabbing a GPU on massive discount right now, or should you be waiting until new GPUs hit in early 2025? We'll also talk about motherboard differences for Zen 5 and possibly Zen 6. Should you be investing in a high-end platform right now in order to future-proof yourself for the next generation? Remember, if you get value out of this video, please give it a like. This makes a huge difference to the channel, and of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Delete Me. Right now, your data is being sold, exposing you to spam calls and leaving you at risk of identity theft and even cyber stalking. But removing your info from data brokers by yourself is hard. Don't go it alone. Get help with Delete Me. Delete Me does much of the heavy lifting for you, using advanced tools and providing regular reports for ongoing data removals. Don't wait until it's too late. Get back your peace of mind by going to joindeleteme.com/PC20 or use the link in the video description to receive 20% off a protection plan today. All right, let's just jump into it. What about the 7800X3D versus the 9800X3D? That's what everybody wants to know. We got Thun, we got JJ Hondo, we got Kermansky Kogalu, and we've got UC Ravens, basically all asking very similar questions. When are we gonna get the 9800X3D? What's going on with the price of the 7800X3D? And should you buy the 7800X3D right now, or should you wait for the 9800X3D? Is it going to make any sense? Especially what's the pricing going to be on that thing? Is it going to be stupid expensive? What is going to happen to the price on the 7800X3D once the 9800X3D comes out? Tons and tons to talk about. So let's just jump into it. Let's start off with what's going on with the 7800X3D. Well, every other CPU is basically, except for the Ryzen 7600 really, has fallen flat on its face in terms of its gaming performance. You can talk about 14th gen Intel, 13th gen Intel with all the degradation issues. Nobody was building that. Really, no one's going to buy a higher core count Ryzen CPU right now unless you're doing production, right? No one's going to do that for gaming. It used to be you bought the CPU on the top of the stack for gaming, but you don't have to do that anymore with the way that the Vcache works now. And they slap it on an 8-core CPU instead of the bigger CPUs now. So yeah, the 7800X3D has essentially been the only CPU to get, because the 9700X didn't come anywhere close to it in terms of its gaming performance. So Ryzen 9000 was a flop. Everybody's been buying it, and it just went completely out of stock. And it's super hard to get to the point when we were posting deals on Amazon Prime Day earlier this month. Like, one of the things we kept posting is, oh my gosh, it's in stock, go, 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 go. And it almost felt like shades of the GPU crisis when we were doing that for GPUs being in stock. And I kind of had some like PTSD flashbacks on that. So yeah, and it's in stock right now as I'm filming this at almost $500 US. Insane, because that CPU was as little as $335 before Ryzen 9000 series came out. I was begging people, buy it at that price. How much faster could the 9800X possibly be? And how much are they going to charge for the 9800X? And that held, including around the $400-ish price point. But now that it's almost $500, I think let's reset the discussion. So should you buy that CPU right now, or should you wait for the 9800X3D? So the 9800X3D, even if it came in at $600 US, I mean, it's all going to depend on the performance. Now, we are expecting, at least the leaks, the rumors, I should say, are points to the 9800X3D is going to be announced the day after the Arrow Lake comes out. I'll have a little bit more to say about Arrow Lake performance too versus the Ryzen X3D CPUs. But we're expecting to get some kind of announcement, maybe October 25th, the day after the Arrow Lake comes out, and then some kind of early November availability. Obviously, I think AMD wants to get this out the door before we get into really the meat of the Black Friday sale. The Black Friday obviously is the day after Thanksgiving in the US, but the sales start well before that now. No longer the days where it was just Black Friday. The sales basically start in late October. In fact, we're already seeing some sale prices like on Radeon GPUs right now, kind of early Black Friday pricing. And they're really good prices, by the way. They're really good prices. More on that later, though. We'll talk about Black Friday a little bit later in the video. But the 9800X3D, we're expecting an announcement probably in the next week and a half, probably a launch shortly thereafter, maybe a week or two afterwards. And we did get some leak slides. Now, take all these leaks with a grain of salt, of course. It's these leaks pointing to that the 9800X3D may be anywhere from 2 to 13% faster, but they only tested 3 games. To me, it's just not enough data to draw any kind of conclusion on right now. Obviously, it's going to be at least a little faster, maybe 5%, right? Zen 5%, LOL. Faster than the 7800X3D. So regardless, it will become the fastest gaming CPU out there. The second question, obviously, is, I guess maybe the second and third questions is, what is AMD going to charge for this CPU, especially given what they've just seen happening to the 7800X3D, now selling well over its MSRP? I think AMD is going to push the price of that CPU. Mr. Bear, Mr. Bear, what you doing? Okay, I lost Mr. Bear. I think he was upset by what I was going to say about the 9800X3D pricing. Look, with the 7800X3D right now selling at $480, $30 over its MSRP, and what, I can't even do the math right now, $150-ish over what it was selling just a couple months ago. Yeah, I think that AMD feels like it really has no competition right now. Obviously, in terms of gaming, Arrow Lake's not going to beat it. Arrow Lake is not going to beat it. We went through this in our CPU market update. Check that out. We projected where we think Arrow Lake's going to come in. But even Intel says it's not going to beat the 7800X3D, so it's certainly not going to beat the 9800X3D. So then, yeah, that CPU could get super expensive. I mean, I could see them charging $600 for that, $599, $549 at least. $459 would be a super optimistic price to just matching the 7800X3D. $499 probably closer to the floor of I think where it actually will be. I wouldn't be surprised if they went to $549 or even $589 or $599 with that CPU, because they're going to take as much margin as they can right now, and it's going to pay to discount probably a lot of those Ryzen 9000 series CPUs. They're just sitting around at prices that they can't sell them for. So, you know, they're going to make as much margin on this one so they can take the loss on these other ones of what they projected. It wouldn't really surprise me. So yeah, I don't think paying $500 for a 7800X3D is that smart when for $50, possibly $100 more, you could get the 9800X3D CPU on it. And I think it'll sell like hotcakes because it's the fastest gaming CPU. The fastest gaming CPU is always sold really, really well because people are convinced that that's what they need to get tons and tons of frames. That's just not the case most of the time. A Ryzen 7600 is going to get you tons of frames with a high-end GPU rather than kind of trading that out for a 7800X3D or 9800X3D and downsizing your GPU in accordance with how much more budget you've spent on your CPU. So if you downsize that GPU by $300 or $400 at this point, $300 or $400 to downsize your GPU, yeah, you're not going to get as many frames. But people have it in their brain, but that the CPU is almost more important than the GPU is. And I don't know where that comes from necessarily, but that's just how people think about this stuff. Remember, when you're building a gaming PC, you want to get the biggest, fastest GPU you can get, then just get a CPU that isn't going to bottleneck it. That last part is important, that isn't going to bottleneck it. You're not going to stick an i7 8700K on that because I got it for free, right? That's going to massively bottleneck your GPU. So you still need a CPU that's not going to bottleneck it, but you get into close enough territory with like the Ryzen 7600, maybe the 7700 gets back down to, it was a really good deal, like $240, by the way. If it's only $40 more than the 7600, yeah, it would make some sense to grab that because it's like 5 or 6% with performance difference with an RTX 4090. Then, of course, do we even have fast enough GPUs right now to push the 9800X3D? That's a good question. And is the 9800X3D just going to instantly sell out? Is it going to be grabbed by scalpers out there? These are all tough questions. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I would certainly wait another week or so to see what happens with an announcement and a possible launch. All right, we also got tons of questions on the 7600X3D. I guess the X3D CPUs are on everyone's brains right now. PAL20, can you please review or research the 7600X3D? They want to know my opinion. Dystopia, 7600X3D versus the 7800X3D, gaming only. Will it be available to everybody outside of Micro Center? Or I guess it's also available in Germany at Mind Factory. And then Maximus, basically options on the 7600X3D. Listen, the 7600X3D seems like a very interesting gaming CPU. Nobody that I really know, I think WCCF Tech did a review of it, but that was before the Windows 24H2 updates on it. It's just really tough to say. It's a Micro Center, I shouldn't say exclusive. In the US, it's Micro Center exclusive. And then I believe it's also available at one or more German retailers. So it's really tough to get your hands on out there. If you have it available to you, I also noticed that Micro Center has 7800X3D CPUs still in stock right now and at a decent-ish price. So if you want an X3D CPU and you have a Micro Center around you, maybe just pick that up. I know you can pick it up in a pretty decent bundle. But the 9600X3D is a CPU that has been rumored. The 9600X3D, 6 cores with Vcache on it. It's very similar to the 7600X3D. We'll have to see where that performance lies. In some of the stuff that WCCF Tech did, this is obviously before the Windows 24H2 update, so maybe this holds, maybe it doesn't. It did seem like in some games, the 7800X3D was quite a bit ahead of the 7600X3D with an RTX 4090 at 1080p, but then when you brought it to 1440p, the gap was much narrow, as we would expect, and then at 4K, again, it was much narrower, and it performed very similarly to the 14900K. Remember, the 7800X3D regularly beats the 14900K, even with the performance BIOS enabled on that, or the performance power profile, I should say. And the 7600X3D performed around that, while the 7800X3D was much faster. So that's kind of where that shakes out. What does that mean for a 9600X3D if we do get one? It's really tough to say. And what's the availability for a 9600X3D? I would just be like spitballing and guessing here. If I shared anything with you, it does seem like they want to continue to do these kind of exclusive deals because maybe they just don't have that many of them. They have to be defects of a 7800X3D or a 5800X3D for the 5600X3D. They're basically a defect where they have to disable a couple of cores and they stock a bunch of those up. And then when they build enough of them up, then they can sell them as a product, but they clearly don't have enough to, or they're not willing to disable that many to ship them to a larger audience. So it kind of is what it is. But what do I think about the platform? SBL XRG wants to know, what are my thoughts on the new X870 motherboards? Should you invest in one now if you're going with AM5? Chico Fiesta, basically similar question, but also added in, what about the price of B650 and B650E motherboards? Are those gonna crash now that we've got the next generation of motherboards? So let me just be very, very clear here. If you're just gaming or primarily gaming and you maybe do some like video editing and Photoshop on the side, or gaming is primarily your use out there, you don't need any of these new boards that just came out. A B650 motherboard is literally all you need. And if you have, you're like, but I have to connect all this extra stuff. If you need to do more kind of production oriented or kind of something that gets away from pure gaming, then yes, maybe you should look at an X670E board, an X870E board. And I will say that X870E is basically X670E. They're almost identical, except that the extra PCIe lanes on the X670E boards, instead of leaving it to the motherboard vendor to decide, do I want to add some more M.2s here? Or we're going to add more high-speed USB ports. They're mandating, AMD is mandating on X870E and X870 that they invest those extra PCIe lanes into USB 4 ports, which I don't know, just about nobody needs. Just about nobody needs, right? I know there's one person, right, furiously typing in the comments, Jason, there's this one particular use case, blah, blah, blah. That's great that you need it. Then go buy one of those boards. Obviously, go buy the board you need. I'm never saying don't buy it if you need it. If you need it, buy it. It makes sense, right? I'm saying for most people, they have a big question mark in their mind. Is bigger number better? X870E, is that better than B650? No, not necessarily. You might just be wasting money that otherwise would go to a bigger CPU, a bigger GPU, better cooling on your thing, more storage. That's one place that people often want to dump money. A cooler looking PC case, maybe some RGB stuff on it. A better PSU, a better gaming monitor. Look, don't forget to invest in your gaming monitor, right? So many people spend so much money on this box and then they're playing on this crappy ancient 1080p monitor and they're like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's like, then why did you spend all this money on your box to get this terrible monitor? Honestly, I see this sometimes. It just blows my mind. But don't overspend on your motherboards. I'm not saying get a crap motherboard. There's definitely, you get additional features as you go up. Typically, it's more USB connectivity, possibly better audio on the motherboard. You get some other features like additional M.2 slots on them. They look nicer. There's better cooling on them in terms of the front panel. There's other things that you can get on those motherboards that give you value. But don't just spend money because, oh, it's got a bigger number next to it. So Mr. Bear has made his triumphant return just in time to talk about Black Friday sales. We've got Arias Colbert and we've got Anonymous basically asking, post some Black Friday sales. Or is it worth upgrading your GPU from a 2070 to like a 4070 on Black Friday? Or should you just wait for the next generation of GPUs? Let's jump into this because I think this is kind of complicated this year because typically in previous years, we would have gotten GPU releases in the fall. We would have gotten a 5090, a 5080, possibly a 5070, or at least know when they're coming and have some idea on the performance metrics that were out there. Similarly with AMD, we would get the Radeon GPUs as well. And of course, we are still potentially going to get Intel Battlemage GPUs, although that's well up in the air at this point. And so you know right now, like what they're going to clear out, what you can expect in terms of the next generation of performance. You really have no idea right now. We know that AMD is not doing the high end, and we know that NVIDIA is probably going to charge an arm and a leg for their high end stuff for the 5090, and that the 5080 looks, at least in terms of the specs that have been leaked, looks somewhat disappointing, and that has to do more with politics and I would just say international kind of power relations than anything else, because the US government currently has an AI export ban into China. And so NVIDIA is basically, it seems like designing the RTX 5080 around that band so they can get something that's high end into the Chinese market, but still meets the requirements. So it can't be as fast as an RTX 4090 because that was too fast to be exported. That's why they had to come up with the RTX 4090D version. So that's what we're looking at here. And it's like so many variables trying to figure out what to do. Listen, here's kind of where I'm at in terms of Black Friday sales. The Radeon GPUs have to go. All the RX 7000 series GPUs from like the 7700 XT probably up to maybe the 7800 XT, all the way up to the 7900 XTX, AMD's got to liquidate them. So because AMD is releasing mid-range GPUs, that means typically they release higher end stuff and they could sell off the older mid-range and lower stuff and keep selling it as the new stuff came out. They can't do that right now because they're coming in at the mid-range. So all this stuff here, it's got to go. It's got to go, and it's got to go now. And we saw on Prime Day massive discounts. The currently $349 for the 7700 XT with two free games on it, $110 value, including Space Marine 2, which everybody was raving about. And then, of course, we've got the 7800 XT came down to $429 or $427 during Amazon Prime Day. So super huge discounts on all of these GPUs, including the 7900 XT was like almost $600. It's basically almost the same price as most of the RTX 4070 Supers out there right now. You can get a 7900 XT instead. That just seems like a no-brainer to me. 20 gigs of VRAM, way faster, obviously. And the 7900 XTX, similarly, down to about $800 on Prime Day. I expect we'll see like a return of those price cuts. Some of them have gone away, but I expect we'll see a return of those price cuts the closer we get to Black Friday and the early Black Friday sales. So if I would just say so much uncertainty out there. If you want something now, get it now, especially with the two free games, if you can get that deal. I mean, when are you going to get $110 value on top of that? You'd have to get a $110 price cut, unless you don't care about the games. If you don't care about the games, obviously that they're not worth anything to you. Maybe then you wait, but it's just hard to look at the value out there and say, oh, wait for something that, number one, we don't even know what the pricing is going to be. We don't know what the performance is going to be. We suspect that price and performance in the next generation, at least on the NVIDIA higher end side, is not going to be what you were hoping for. Maybe the RTX 5090 is going to cost $2,500 to $3,000 for all we know. Maybe not 3,000, but they're going to charge something really, really stupid for it. I think we all know that. So just take all that into account. And to me, the balance of that equation comes out to buy the good deals right now, especially the Radeon ones that are cutting prices so hard. I don't think we're going to see NVIDIA necessarily cut those GPU prices the same way, unless they're going to launch their mid-range cards to compete with AMD's mid-range offerings in January. Maybe that's going to happen. And if they are going to do that, then they also have to clear out all of their back stock for RTX 4000 because they don't want to get left holding the bag on those. So maybe there will be bigger discounts this year around Black Friday than we've seen in the past on NVIDIA GPUs. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. All right, we got a highly upvoted question from Todd. Basically, what's going on with motherboards with basic audio versus upgraded audio? Can I explain the difference? What's the benefits and features of upgraded audio? All right, so I'm gonna break this down really quickly. I'll leave our best Ryzen motherboard video link down in the video description. I do go into this in some depth. I'll also leave some Igor's Lab articles, or I leave some Igor's Lab articles talking about the various codec differences in those videos themselves, in the motherboard videos themselves. So check those out for more. But here's the quickest breakdown I can give you. Basically, you're only using your motherboard audio when you plug in a 3.5 or 2.5 millimeter, it looks like a pin, into your front panel of your motherboard and the audio jack, or the rear audio jacks on your motherboard. Otherwise, if you're plugging in a USB device or an HDMI device that's going to offload that audio processing, you're offloading it to a secondary device, basically. So that's one thing right there. So make sure that you're actually using the audio before you start caring about the audio processing on your motherboard. Now, there is a difference here in terms of motherboard audio. You will need better headphones in order to tell that difference. So if you're using a crappy pair of headphones, yeah, you're not going to notice the difference between kind of a poor audio product and a higher quality audio product necessarily, right? If your headphones are crap. But let's just assume you have good headphones. Typically, there's three things you want to look for. One is the audio codec. So the most basic one is the Realtek ALC 897. The next one up is typically the ALC 1200. And then you have either the ALC 1220 or the ALC 4080. Those last two are roughly the same in terms of their performance. I don't want to get overly into the codecs and the differences between them, but that's one. The other thing you can have is the number of capacitors in the audio section. More capacitors, generally higher quality there. And then, of course, there's the amount of shielding. There's stuff that you can't necessarily see, which is how well are the traces, the audio traces on the motherboard, shielded from EMF signals, even from stuff like your GPU out there. So all that kind of comes together to create the audio experience on your motherboard. I will say I've begun to de-emphasize it because increasingly we're moving to digital devices for audio processing, so not even analog devices that would use that. So I have begun to de-emphasize it. The other thing is I emphasized it a lot more like for B550 motherboards or B450 motherboards, because you were literally only spending like $20 or $30 more between the basic board and the upgraded board. And in addition to the upgraded audio, you probably got more USB slots, higher speed USB slots, more M.2s on it. Like you got more stuff on that motherboard in addition to just the audio. Nowadays, you really have to spend like $60, $70 to get upgraded audio. The B650 boards with upgraded audio are like $200. So sometimes they sell a little bit cheaper than that. So yeah, that's just tough. It's hard for me to tell you to spend an extra $60 to get better audio when you're getting already kind of roughly enough USB, Wi-Fi, and all that kind of stuff at the lower level, and M.2s at the lower level boards. It's hard for me to tell people to go out and spend $50 extra just for the audio section if they don't need all that other stuff that you would have needed in the past. So I've begun to de-emphasize it a little bit, but for those of you who want better audio on it, I'm going to continue to include it in our motherboard reviews. Remember, if you got value out of this video, please give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. What kind of cool content other than this cat right here? Well, we did some amazing gaming PC builds for Black Friday sales. Check it out. Early Black Friday sales are already going. We have builds from $800, $1,200, and $1,750. Check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.